my tribe. It's Howling After Dark. Gonna have a really good show for you tonight. All about survival and survival skills and what it takes to survive in extreme situations. So, let me just check something real quick here. Oh, isn't this lovely? Evidently nobody's listening. Okay, let's see. Anyhow, just to get on with it, let's start with the 4 things that you need to survive in any situation. Whether you were survived a plane crash, whether you're lost in the woods or in the mountains or even desert. And that's something I'm going to cover too. You always have to take into account your environment. But regardless of whatever environment you're in, there are 4 things you need to survive. Number 1 is food. Now, a lot of people would say that number 1 is water. I disagree. And the reason why is the first thing that you need to survive is energy. To do what you need to do in order to survive, you need energy, and food gives you energy. Therefore, I put number 1 as food. Number 2 is water, and not just water, clean water. Number 3 is shelter. And number 4 is navigation. Now, a lot of people would say 4 is fire. I disagree with that because I think a good fire is actually part of your shelter. And we'll get into that here in a second. So, I'm going to basically teach you tonight the native way of surviving in these situations. Because your average, like, Navy SEAL or Army Ranger is taught survival skills. But and a lot of the survival skills they're taught are actually Native American in their origins. But there's a lot of things that they don't know that I found to be not only beneficial but necessary in order for someone to actually thrive. And I'm going to get into that too. So let's start with number 1, food. Now, there's lots of ways to get food in nature. Depending on where exactly you found yourself in trouble can differ what your diet might consist of. For example, if you're up in the mountains somewhere, let's say for example that you survived a plane crash up in the mountains, much like the people, the soccer team from Alive. For fuck's sake, really? evidently the sound's off again, which is starting to get frustrating. Is this better? Fuck's sake, that's so confusing. Like last week, I didn't have my headset, and it was echoing or doing something, and so I plugged my headphones in and it was fine. This week I have my headphones in and it's echoing. Very confusing. Anyways, so as I was saying, yeah, okay, thank you, Ray. As I was saying, there are 4 things every person needs to survive. My list of the 4 things is a little bit different than probably what you would hear from other people. As I said at the beginning, food. A lot of people would say water before food. I disagree. I think if you're healthy and you've got enough energy to do what you need to do, water will be forthcoming. So I put food first, then water, then shelter, and last but not least, navigation. Now, a lot of people would say number 4 should be fire. I disagree. I think fire is a part of any good shelter. It supplies not only warmth but your means to cook. Now, in our first example, I'm talking about a situation like the soccer team from the movie Alive, where if you've never seen it, I'll explain it really quickly. They crashed in a plane above, I believe it was above 12,000 feet, which is a snowcap, like a giant snowcap. Basically, at that altitude, snow never melts. It's all snow and ice up there, and because it's all snow and ice, there's no vegetation, and because there's no vegetation, there's no animal life. And basically what happened with those guys is they resorted to basically cannibalism in order to survive. The guys that would die, they would basically eat them, which I know sounds disgusting, and I agree, it is, but I don't blame them for doing that either. However, if they would have known what I know, they would have never had to resorted to such drastic measures. So, given that environment, you're above 12,000 feet, you just survived a plane crash, what possibly could there be to eat that's going to sustain you? Well, glad you asked, because there's a plant. It only grows at high altitudes, and it actually thrives in cold weather. It's called eagle root. And the way the eagle root looks, the plant above the surface is kind of reminiscent of like, what is it, like lilac, or like not the cattail part of a cattail plant, but like the leafy underpart is kind of similar to that look. And here's the best part. Eagle root not only can help you survive, it actually tastes good. It's like eggplant. Yes, it's eagle root. And all you got to do in order to eat eagle root is you pull out the plant and you knock the dirt off, and every single piece of that plant is edible. The leafy part of it is actually very reminiscent of celery. You can also use it as like a garnish if you have meat of any sort. If you've managed to get a rabbit or something that might live at that altitude, you can use that meat in combination with the eagle root and make kind of like a rudimentary soup or stew that will not only taste good, it's so high in protein and calories that it'll keep you alive for days. Which brings me to the second part, water. Easiest part about being lost or stranded or in this scenario surviving a plane crash up in the mountains is you're surrounded by water. Snow itself is pure water, unless for some reason it's like acid rain type water that's landed on this mountain. You can take handfuls of it and eat it and get your water that way, or you can even start a fire and melt it. However, I have to caution you, there are certain things to look for when you want to get snow. Don't get snow that's been stepped on by man or animal. Don't get obviously the whole yellow snow, don't make jokes, but it's serious. You know, it really is. Like if you get to the point where you're snowblind, you can't see whether snow's yellow or not. So the best thing to do is, if you have to use snow as water, is to boil it. But if you don't have that luxury, make sure that you and everybody else is using the same spot to go tinkle, because you don't want to contaminate your water source. And in that scenario, your water source is snow. Also be aware of animal tracks. Don't get snow close to animal tracks. There's a chance they urinated or what have you, and I'm telling you, the last thing you want up at that altitude is dysentery, which is what you would get from ingesting urine. Very nasty, gives you violent diarrhea. I had it once when I was a kid. Trust me, it's not pretty. Okay, so that takes care of number one and number two. Number three, shelter. Well, in the scenario of like a plane crash, obviously you're going to have the plane itself as shelter. That's kind of a no-brainer. But let's say you're otherwise stranded in the snow or up at high altitude. Probably the best shelter you're going to be able to do is an ice cave, or like a rudimentary igloo kind of situation. And but the most convenient is an ice cave or a snow cave, and it's very simple. You find the deepest bank of snow that you can find on a mountain. Now the best way to do this is to actually look at the topography of the mountain itself. Every mountain I've ever seen has parts in it where it like has saddles or ridges that come down, and those spots are going to be the best because the snow's actually deeper. It's actually deep enough to dig into. So what you want to do is you want to use whatever you can, preferably not your hands, but your hands will do in a pinch. But a bowl or something to scoop snow with. And you want to dig in, and not just dig a hole and then go in it. It's not that easy. What you do is you dig your hole, but then you want to flatten it all the way around, probably with your hand. If you have like a entrenching tool, that's a bonus, and you smooth it out all the way around. What that'll do is actually solidify that wall. It'll make it kind of like a crust, which will keep the snow from falling in on you. And then what you do is you take your backpacks or your clothes, or worst case scenario, you grab a bunch of dead foliage, whatever you can find, to cover the entrance to your little snow cave. And then here's the important part. What you want to do, if you don't have blankets or sleeping bags or anything like that, what you want to do is you want to take one layer of clothing or whatever material you have and line the bottom with it. If you happen to have like laundry bags or anything that's resistant to water, that's even better. And then what you want to do is you want to strip down naked. The reason why, and I know a lot of people say, well, why would you want to strip down naked if you're in the snow? Well, the answer is very easy. What usually keeps you warm in a survival situation can be potentially deadly to you. And the reason why is because when you're inside this like hole that you dug, that snow, because it's white, it's going to act as a reflector of heat. Now, if you're out trudging around in the snow, that's different. You need something to cover you. But when you're talking about inside your shelter, it's a different story, because that snow is actually going to trap the heat in, and you want as little as possible between your body and that heat. So I would say strip down your skivvies at least, and there you go. It may not be the most comfortable night's rest, but you'll survive it. Now comes the next trick. Fire. Fire's a really tricky thing in the snow, as I'm sure you can imagine. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want a flat piece of land, basically, to build your fire on. You want to clear away as much of the snow as possible until you get down to the earth itself. Now, at high altitudes, a lot of the time, a fire isn't really an option. So whatever you eat, you're going to have to eat it raw. But for this lesson, I guess you could say, we're going to go with the fire. And the best way to do that is, if you're alone, the best thing you could possibly do, to be honest about it, is to get off that fucking mountain. Get to a lower altitude, beneath the snow cap, where you can find things like fuel for fires and whatnot. However, if that is not an option, here's my trick for you. If you can snag a rabbit, rabbits are really the best for this, because believe it or not, rabbits have a lot of fat in their bodies, which is what you want. So you skin your rabbit, you take the meat. Most people would throw away what's left. Here's why you don't do that. What you want to do is you actually want to use that fat as a fire starter, because fat is like wax. When you light it, it'll contain flame long enough to kindle a fire. I always suggest to have a lighter or matches, especially waterproof ones, if you ever go into nature, period. Regardless of whether you're, just visiting during the day, like at a state park, or whether you're camping out, always have these key essential items with you. A knife, some kind of fire starter, whether it be like a flint stick, like waterproof matches, or a lighter, and a compass. But we're going to get to that. So basically what you do is you take the tallow, which is the actual fat, okay, and what you want to do is you want to cut it into kind of like a cube, and you put it where you're going to have your fire. Now hopefully there's enough foliage above ground that you can find some kindling. The drier the better. Actually, a really good thing to use, believe it or not, is anything with pine trees. Pine trees can survive at higher altitude, and the needles are actually very flammable, so they make great kindling. And what you want to do is you want your tallow and then your kindling on top of that, but you want to make sure that you make it into kind of like a cone or a pyramid type shape, so that there's plenty of oxygen to feed that fire. And then you want to have the driest wood that you can find. In the situation of like an airplane crash, one thing they didn't do that I wish they would have is they could have used the cushions of their seats to actually start a fire with, because they are flammable, but they don't burn very fast. They burn about as slow as a wooden log, in fact. So they could have used that, and they had a lot of other tools there that they could have used to survive, including flares. Every aircraft I've ever heard of has a survival kit, which includes flares, which they could have used to start a fire and kept it going for as long as they were there. So you want to get anything flammable like that. Preferably wood. Wood is always going to be preferable, but not every situation is going to allow you to find wood. Okay, so there's that. And that's your shelter. Navigation, and this is absolutely my favorite. The easiest way to tell navigation is to see which way the sun travels. East and west is not hard to figure out, people. It rises in the east, it sets in the west. Well, if you know what east and west are, you know what north is. That tells you your direction. So that's pretty basic. But if for some reason, like, there's a lot of cloud cover, or you can't see the sun for whatever reason, there are other ways, especially little known ways that you can actually find your way out. I always suggest, no matter where you are, look at your terrain. Your terrain will actually tell you everything you need to know. For example, even if you can't see the sun, look at the mountain. Just by looking, you can tell which side has more snow caked on it. Right? Well, the side that has more snow caked on it is going to be your east. because by the time the sun reaches it, the temperatures are cool. Therefore, it's not melting as fast. So the side with the least amount of snow on it, or no, sorry, I had that backwards. The side with the least amount of snow on it is going to be the east, because it's the first to receive the light of the sun, and the side with the most snow on it is going to be the west. So if you know where east and west is, you know where north and south are, therefore you can point your way out. But if for some reason the view of that side is obstructed, or you can't see it, or it snowed so heavily that it's all blanketed in snow for whatever reason, like if you're at a super high altitude, say above 20,000 feet above sea level, then your best bet is there's a couple tricks that you need to learn. One is you can take like if you have an old-fashioned watch with like the hands on it, what you can do is you can actually take the watch apart, that little glass face on it, right? You put a little water in it, and you can take the big hand of your watch and drop it inside the face and use it like a compass, because there's enough metal in there that it's actually going to point north. Now, if you don't have an old-fashioned watch, the same thing will actually work with a pine needle, because pine is actually very high in iron. So especially if you can actually find an ironwood, that would even be better. But pine up in the mountains is very easy to find, even when everything is sparse. You can find it. You may have to dig in the snow for a pine needle, but trust me, you'll find one. And you can take something to contain water. It could be a leaf, it could be a piece of bark, whatever, and you fill it with water and then drop that needle in it. Same thing, it's going to point north. So there's your navigation. Now, same four things, different territory. You're in a lowland forest and you're completely lost. Let's say you're in Yellowstone or Yosemite, which are the two most massive national parks we have, and you're completely lost. You don't know where anybody is, and all you know is that there's a road to the south. You don't have any of the stuff I was talking about with direction. There are some tricks to find that out, though. But let's start at the beginning. Food. Well, you're in, let's say, Yosemite. Food is abundant. You just got to know what to look for. Number one, loads of deer. Even if you don't have a knife, by the way, you can always make one. There's flintstone actually makes nice because it's easy to break apart, and then you can sharpen the edges, and it'll actually be sharp enough that you can skin a fish. But let's just say you have a folding knife on you. So the easiest way is to set a trap. Now, depending on what kind of game we're talking about, depends on what kind of trap you make. Probably the easiest is snares, because there's all sorts of materials in the forest that you can use to make a snare. You can even use your shoelaces. And a snare is a really, really simple trap. And for this scenario, we're going to say that you're trying to trap a rabbit. Well, all you got to know to trap a rabbit in the forest is what do they eat. And then you find the thing that they eat, and that's the bait for your trap. And so you set the trap. And the way you set it is you want to get a stick approximately yay big around, and kind of sharpened at one point so that you can stick it into the ground. And you want to kind of use like natural camouflage for the snare itself. And the best way to do it is actually set it so that like instead of just being a loop of string on the ground flat, you angle it a little bit and use like the surrounding foliage to like raise it up, and then you use your piece of bait, which rabbits love wild strawberries, by the way, which grow in nature quite abundantly. Any kind of berry, really. So if all you got to do is find some, and then you bait it, and what's going to happen is it's going to reach its head in. It's actually going to put its head through the hoop to get to the berry, and as it pulls back, its ears are going to snag the material you're using for the snare, your shoelaces. And as it jerks its head back, it's going to tighten like a noose. And if you get it right, it's going to snap the rabbit's neck, and there you have food. Another way of setting a trap is actually for deer. What you want to figure out is the approximate height of a deer's chest. I happen to know that approximate is between 3 to 4 feet in height off of the floor. And what you want to do is you want to create a spring trap. Well, the best way to do that is to make what's the word I'm looking for, a tripwire. Okay, probably the best one to use would be like fishing line, if you have any fishing line on you, which if you're smart about survival, you probably do. But even if you don't have fishing line, pretty much any kind of string would work, including your shoelaces. And what you want to do is you want to use the limb on a tree, and you want to basically use the limbs coming off of one side of a limb, and you want it to be a relatively young tree, so that the limbs have some pliability, and you sharpen them into points. And what you want to do is you want it to be about chest high to a deer. And what you do is you pull it back with your string around the tree, and then you come across like a tripwire. And what's going to happen is that deer travels through, it's going to trip that tripwire, and that limb is going to snap around and impale it in the chest, killing the deer. And even if it doesn't kill the deer right away, it's not going to live very long. And probably the most humane thing to do, if it's not indeed dead, is you grab it by its antlers, because it's not going to be fighting much at that point. And you just quick jerk, and you break its neck, and there's your food. I know it sounds brutal, and very understandably, I would prefer to actually hunt a deer myself, but it'll do in a pinch. So, the other thing you can do is you can make spears. If you've got a knife, you can use the knife as like a spear, and you can spear fish. Another thing you can do is you can do something similar to like a snare, but with fish too.
You just need something that's going to weigh down the snare a little bit, but not so much that it's going to resist the power of the fish. You actually want it to tighten around the fish. But probably the best way is to spear them. And high in protein, may not taste the best, but there you go. So there's food. Water in the forest. There's some key tricks to finding water. But one thing you need to know, you should never panic about it. You should never panic, ever, in a survival situation like this. Ever. Panic is your enemy. Panic will get you killed 10 times faster than anything else. So the best way to find water is really easy, actually. What you want to do is, once again, you want to look at the topography of the land. Water is always going to be lower down than mountains or hillsides. So probably the best thing to do would be to climb a tree, or maybe a rock or something high up, so that you can look out at the land and look for the lowest spot. The lowest spot is generally where a creek or a river or something to that effect is, and that's where you want to go. You want to camp close to a river, but not right on it. And the reason I say that is because animals are going to go to that river. So you want to be within walking distance to the river, but you don't want to be right on the river. And you gotta, like if you were lost, let's say in Yosemite, you have to worry about things like bears. However, I will tell you this: bears do not randomly attack people. I don't give a shit what you've seen on TV. It doesn't happen. They may come and be curious and go through your camp and destroy everything you have, but they don't typically attack people unless they've been provoked in some way. You know how they always say don't feed bears? Well, the reason why is because bears don't have an appetite like we do. Okay, when we're hungry, we eat until we're full and then we're done. Bears don't have that. They eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. And the reason why is because they hibernate. So they don't have that mechanism in their body that tells them when to stop eating. They're constantly eating when they're awake. So feeding them is dangerous, because when you feed them, they still want more. They're going to take a chunk out of you. And then you've just made a problem for people like me that hunt down rogue bear, because that's what you've just created with your stupidity, a rogue bear. And nothing worse on the face of the planet is worse than a rogue grizzly. I'm telling you, because they actively hunt people. So, yeah, be mindful of that. You don't want to put yourself in that situation where, well, I'm going to be coming across bear, wolves, or whatever else that could potentially kill me because I slept too close to water. Not to mention mountain lions. Now, there are two ways to start a fire, and I'm going to tell you both. And this is key to survival, because you don't want to draw like the attention of a bear. If a bear smells or sees smoke, it's going to come looking. They're curious animals. They're very curious by nature, so they'll come looking. if they see smoke. So what you want to do is you want to set 2 fires. You want to set one that can be used as like a signal fire, and that one you're going to set pretty much the same way as your cooking fire, but the difference is you're going to use a lot of green stuff. You're going to use a lot of green leaves on that fire, a lot of green pine needles on that fire. The reason why is you want more smoke so that people that are looking for you can find it. Then you want your cooking fire to be what we call a smokeless fire. The way to do that is you use pine needles, like especially dry ones, as kindling. Is the best way to do it. And you dig down a little bit into the ground so that it's like a little concave kind of pit in a rough circle shape, and then you line it with rocks. The reason why you want to do this is twofold. Number one, rocks are a great insulator. They'll keep heat. Even when the fire goes out, it'll still be warm. And two, it'll keep your fire from spreading and starting a forest fire. So you circle it with rocks to contain the fire. You lay down a bed of kindling, pine needles, or whatever else you happen to have, even paper works if you have it. And then around it you want to build kind of a cone with sticks. You don't want them to be too high because it'll fall over and then you've got problems. But about yay tall and probably about yay wide at the base, probably like 2 feet to 18 inches wide. So it should be 2 feet from anywhere in that circle to the center. And you only want it to be about yay tall, because you don't want it to fall over once it ignites, which, you know, can happen when you build it too tall. Anyways, so in the center of that you have all your kindling. Now it's time to start the fire. Well, like I said before, it's always helpful to have a lighter with you, or a flint stick or something. But let's say you don't have that. Well, there's a couple of good ways. You can either look close to a river for flint rock. Flint rock you'll recognize because it's a very dark colored rock and it has a lot of flex in it. It's also very porous looking. It doesn't look smooth like a river stone. It looks more rough like granite. But it's darker in color. It's like a really dark charcoal gray kind of color. You want to take your piece of flint, and if you have any metal on you, it's ideal, but for sake of argument, let's say you don't. So what you want to do is you want to find something with a lot of iron content in it. Certain rocks do. You see it. It's kind of like a copper band inside of a rock. So you strike those rocks together to create a spark. And the object is you want to get your kindling to start smoking. Once it starts smoking, you blow on it. You don't want to blow on it too hard, but you don't want to blow on it too soft. What you want to do is kindle the flame. You want it to ignite, which isn't too hard with pine needles, so you don't want to stick your face too close into it. But you kind of blow on it until it gets going. Voila, there's your fire. Now, in the forest, the best way for shelter is to build a lean-to. Now, the best way to build a lean-to is actually all around you in the forest, especially when there's a lot of pine trees. And it's really simple. What you want is you want 2 straight poles. made out of wood. You want them to be the thicker part. Okay? You start with 2 straight poles that you stick in the ground, so they're straight up like this. And then you want to build kind of a frame out of smaller poles that yay big around, and kind of a square frame. And you're going to literally lean that on top of the straight poles. And then what you want to do is you want to take limbs of pine trees that still have the leaves on them. You don't want to take the leaves off, because the leaves are actually going to be what keep you warm. And you want to layer them until, across this leaning section, until there is no light coming through. That takes care of your shelter. You have bar, you have shelter, you have food, you're close enough to water. But the trick is you want to be really careful with river water. It may look clean, that doesn't mean it is. The best way to be safe is to boil it. If you don't have the means to boil it, I'll teach you another trick, and this is a good way to get a cold drink of clean water. You go close to the river and you look for moss. Green moss. Lime green colored moss. You've probably seen it a million times. Well, the great thing about this moss, especially if you can find it where it's grown thickest, is that moss is a natural purifier. Now, the trick is what you want to do is you want to take your knife and you want to separate it from whatever it's attached to, whether it be a rock or a tree or what have you. And you want to separate it in like a strip about yay thick of moss is the ideal. It's about yay thick. And so it's like a blanket of moss. It's all complete, it's all together, it's not in chunks or whatever. And then what you want to do is you want to take really small, really fine river pebbles, and you want to line it on this blanket of moss. And once you have it lined, completely covered with these pebbles, you fold it in half. And then you fold it again so that all the corners are in your grip, and you kind of want to make sort of like a bowl out of it. And you take your canteen or piece of bark or whatever it is that you have with you to catch water. Even having a hole in the ground lined with rocks will work. But you want to get that water out. You want to drink that water before it seeps into the ground. In that case. But the most ideal would be to have like a canteen, like an old military style canteen with the cup, and use the cup to catch the water. Because what will happen is you dip this moss contraption you've made into the water, and as you come up and you're standing up, you want it to drip right into this cup. Because what's going to happen is it's going to drip down and be 100% clean water, because moss is a natural purifier. In combination with those rocks, it's clean. Like you could trust it with a baby. Clean. Absolutely nothing in it. If you can't find moss, then the best thing to do is to boil it. Boiling it will actually kill off a lot of the microbes and stuff, and it'll be hot, but it'll be safe to drink. So that covers shelter, that covers food, that covers water. Now comes navigation. Once again, there's the pine needle trick, but for this scenario, I'm going to teach you another way. especially closer to rivers, you're probably going to find trees that have moss growing on it. Well, here's the trick. You look at what side of the tree the moss is growing on. Because, here's why. The side of the tree that the moss is growing on is south. The reason that direction is south is because south gets the least amount of sun. Because it rises in the east and it sets in the west, it's hitting the west, north, and east side of the tree. But south gets the least amount of sun. So that tells you that if it's growing on this side, then this will, like, if it's on the side facing me, then behind me is south. Like, I'm looking at this can. Let's say the can is the tree with the moss on this side facing me, then I know that behind me is south, therefore in front of me is north. If I know that the road is to the south, I know that I need to go that way. Which brings us to another trick. Now, between me and the south, where the road is, where I need to go to find my way to civilization, as they say, which, let's be honest, I'd rather be lost in the woods, just saying. But, let's say that, for whatever reason, I need to be found. I would never need to be found, but let's say I do. I know that south, there's a road or freeway or whatever, but there's a river between me and it. Now, here's a couple tricks. If you have like a can, like a Coke can, or something else lightweight that would float in the water, what you want to do is you take your shoelaces, right, and you hold the shoelace on one end, the other end has your can, let's say, an empty can, of course, around it, and you want to block the opening as best you can on the open end, so that it'll stay afloat longer. And you take your string and you toss the can into the river. Well, what's going to happen is, straight in front of you, is perfect. There's no hole in the river. It's just straight. So you can just swim straight across. But let's say that your can is getting pulled all the way this way, that tells you that it's a very strong pull. So what you're going to have to do, if you got to get here, you need to go into the river way upstream to get to there, because the river is going to pull you. Okay, so you figured that part out. Now, whatever you have on you that is necessary for your survival, don't ever leave anything behind. Don't ever forget your knife. Don't ever forget your compass. Even if you had to make it yourself, keep it with you. Put everything you can in a backpack or a waterproof pack if you have one. And even if that isn't possible, build yourself like a little small raft, not for you, for your stuff. Because key to survival is to keep your gear dry. Because without dry gear, you're screwed. You really are. You're screwed. And you know that's south, but what if you're wrong about where the road is and it's even farther south than you predicted, and you've got to survive these woods even longer? So you want to keep things like that in your mind. So you calculated how much pull is in the river, which tells you how far upriver you need to be. Every inch it's pulled downriver is roughly 100 feet further up stream you need to be if you swim like just an average person. If you swim like an Olympic swimmer, you're good. But if you don't, if you swim like an average person, which isn't very fast, you want to start farther upriver. And the best way to do it is you build your raft for your stuff. So you've got your stuff on this little raft, probably like a little 2 foot by 2 foot raft that you can keep your stuff dry with. And you want to have your shoelaces or whatever kind of rope that you have as kind of like a leash. You want to hold the leash in one hand, and you want to do a side stroke. And the reason you want to do a side stroke is you want to always have one hand on that leash, and even if you don't have any stuff and you just have like a knife, you still want to keep that hand free just in case, because you never know what will happen. I've heard stories about guys that survived for weeks. They found their way to the river, went across the river, and ended up facing a grizzly bear on the other side and got killed. So anything you can do to better your chances of survival, do it. But you got your stuff. It's on a leash, attached to this raft, and you do a side stroke across the river. And as you're swimming across, the stream is carrying you downriver. So you know safety is approximately, let's say, 800 feet further downriver and on the other side of the river, so you want to start swimming across. Well, it may seem like you're swimming straight across, but in actuality, you're getting pulled downriver. So ideally, you want to end up right where you intended. Doesn't always happen. Even pros mess it up from time to time. Even Bear Grylls has messed that one up. So that takes care of your navigation. Now, let's take desert. I have survived, personally, I have survived in a desert with no water, no canteen at all. And the reason I did that is because I knew how to find water. I know to look for certain plants in the desert that can keep me alive. One of the best and one of the most tasty options will not only supply you with water, it'll supply you with food, and it'll supply you with fire. There's a particular type of saguaro cactus that has these red bulbs on them. Now, if you didn't know, you might overlook that and think nothing of it. But those red bulbs are incredibly good tasting. They're actually called cactus fruit, or prickly pears. And the best way to prepare them, a lot of people like to cook them. I'm not one of those people. I actually prefer them uncooked, and the best way to do that is obviously to remove the needles, because it's got needles just like a cactus does. But the best way I found to remove needles is you take your knife, or if you don't have a knife, a sharp stick, which isn't hard. You can make a sharp stick by rubbing it into a point off of a rock. And trust me, there are sticks in the desert. You just have to look for them. Red manzanita grows in the desert, for example. It's a very short tree. It only gets to be about 3 or 4 feet tall, but it is a natural bark leaved tree. So anyways, you use your knife or sharp stick or whatever, and you kind of cut it off, being very careful of the needles, because trust me, you don't want a bunch of needles in you in the desert. All sorts of badness can happen. Needles, getting stuck with cactus needles can actually kill you. Because, let's say, an animal got stuck by a needle and it was carrying some disease. Well, guess what? Now you got that disease because you're stuck by the same needle. So you have to be very careful of the needles. You can either burn them off, which a lot of people prefer. I, once again, am not one of those people. I found the best way to do it actually is there's stuff called webgrass that grows in the desert. It's actually what tumbleweeds are made of. Partially, anyways. I mean, tumbleweeds are really just kind of whatever that's rolled up together. But what usually gets them stuck together is this stuff called webgrass. And it's kind of a mossy looking plant. And it's all kind of clumped together. Well, the reason why is it's actually sticky. That's part of its survival mechanism. Like insects and stuff can't nest in there because they can't survive, getting through, just much like a spider web. So what I do is I stuck the cactus fruit on the knife, and I stick the needles of the cactus fruit into the webgrass, and what I do is I kind of spin it, and I spin it, and I spin it on the webgrass, using it kind of like sandpaper almost, like sticky sandpaper. And what it'll do is, as you spin it, it actually pulls the needles out. So by the end, what you have is as you're sitting there spinning it, you'll feel it when there's no longer any resistance. And when there's no longer any resistance, that means there's no needles. So you give it just a couple more turns, and you pull it up, and you'll see there's no needles on it anymore. And so you can peel it much like you would an apple at this point and eat the fruit. Probably the best way is to slice it and get the seeds out. But very, very good. Oh my God. There's very little fruit on the face of the planet that tastes as good. That plus a lot of the same techniques you learn from the forest you can use in the desert, like snares and stuff, because there's jackrabbits and other small critters that you can survive on. Also, the key to survival is to be opportunistic. If for whatever reason you happen to come across, let's say, a deer or a goat or whatever, or even a rabbit that's just kind of laying there dead for whatever reason, that's food. As long as it's not riddled with not to be disgusting, but like maggots or something, it's good to eat. I mean, you can smell it when it's rotten, so like you'll know. I mean, when it's rotten, it's really rotten. It smells like rotten hamburger when it's gone bad. So be opportunistic. Take every advantage you can get in that situation, especially in the desert, because the desert, the thing that kills you the quickest isn't even like the lack of water. It's not even the lack of food. What kills you quickest in the desert is ignorance, because people don't know how to survive the desert. And so that same plant with the cactus fruit, when you eat it, it's very juicy. It's also giving you a little bit of water. Now, the other thing this plant in particular should tell you is that there's water somewhere close by. Now, the last thing you want to do is go wandering around looking for some water source you may never see, because the desert has a lot of underground rivers. So what you do is you look for an abundance of these things. An abundance of green cactuses tells you kind of where the water is. Like, if you're in a desert valley and all the cactuses are in this valley and you can see it's running north and south, then it's got to be in one of those two directions. Now, here's the trick. Look at the plants. Some plants will look healthier than others. That will tell you which direction to go. So what you do is you go all the way to where the healthiest looking plant is, and then you travel in a straight line from that plant. You don't want to go too far. You don't want to lose sight of those plants. You want to stay in relatively one area so that somebody can find you. But you do need to find water. Now, I would say travel about 100 feet and see what looks different. If it looks like there's more and more variety of plants, bushes, and that kind of thing, that should probably tell you that you're getting closer to like a river or a pool of water or something. The other trick is always smell the water before you drink it in the desert. A lot of areas in the desert are very heavy with alkali, and the last thing you want to drink is alkali water. It's like drinking turpentine. Very not healthy. But if you don't smell anything, it's probably good water. But just to be safe, you should always boil it. Always. I know it's the desert, hot water not exactly appealing, but trust me, you're going to want to make sure. The last thing you need in the desert is dysentery, because then you'll die twice as quick from dehydration. Now, the other trick is you got to keep cool. And the best way to keep cool in the desert is right here. Actually, long sleeves, believe it or not, will help you quite a bit, even in the desert, because it'll actually trap what condensation leaves your body through sweat, number one, and number two, if you have layered shirts like I like to wear, even in the desert, you can take one and wrap it around your head like a turban, and it will trap in that moisture, and that will actually help you. And it may sound disgusting, and it kind of is, but worst case scenario, you can squeeze that out and actually drink it. You won't get much out of it, but it'll keep you alive. Another trick that you can use in desert and very high temperature areas is you take a pebble and you put it in your mouth and you suck on it. It'll actually stimulate your saliva, and your saliva will actually keep you hydrated. So yeah, you want to pay attention to always pay attention to the terrain. The terrain will tell you where the water is every time. The other thing you always want to pay attention to, no matter what environment you're in, is the animals. Because the animals will lead you to two things. They'll lead you to food, and they'll lead you to water. And here's the thing about water, especially in the desert. Sooner or later, you're going to hit civilization, because most people that live in the desert live close to water sources. There's help. So, pay attention to animal tracks. Animal tracks will tell you everything you need to know. And it's not hard. It's pretty easy to distinguish the difference between a jackrabbit, for example, which is never going to lead you anywhere, and say a deer. If you see a deer track in the desert, fucking follow it, because it's going to lead you to water or it's going to lead you to food, one or the other. And in just the rare cases where it leads you to nothing, you can always follow the tracks back, and that way you're staying in a contained area, so that when help comes, it's not going to be hard for them to find you. So there's that. Shelter in the desert's really easy. Desert has a lot of loose soil, if not sand. And the best way is you take sawgrass, which sawgrass is probably the easiest thing to find in the desert. It kind of looks like the color of wheat or hay. And you take like your shirt or a handkerchief or whatever it is you have, and you take some sawgrass and you put it in there, and you kind of roll it up, and you can use that as a pillow. And then what you want to do is you want to dig into the earth like a hole for your hip, so you sleep on your side, right? And the reason why you want to sleep on your side is because if something should happen, God forbid, and some wild animal comes in, and it's a dangerous situation, on your side, you're actually going to be able to get up faster than you would if you were like laying on your stomach or on your back. That plus, when you're laying on your side, you've got one arm free. So, say a mountain lion comes in, gets a little too curious, I've got my knife, stab right in the neck, dead mountain lion, and I have food now. So yeah, so shelter's the easiest thing, but part of the shelter is you want to build a fire. Abundance of things you can start fires with in the desert. Very simple way, if you don't have a lighter or matches or what have you, you can take the glass face off of a watch and use it like a magnifying glass to actually start a fire. Another way is to take like a wooden bow system, which is you take the flattest piece of wood you can find, and you put kindling around it, which isn't hard to find. Dry grass works really well. Then you take a stick, usually pretty thin, about yay big, and you as fast as you can. And what it'll do is it'll cause enough friction that it'll start to smoke. Once it starts smoking, you blow on it, trying to get embers to start and you're kindling. And once the kindling erupts into flame, there's the basis of your fire. And just like I said before, cone shapes, cone shapes are really good because it feeds the fire, will keep the fire going. It's relatively smokeless, so it won't draw attention from animals or dangerous individuals even, which there are some in the desert, trust me, and you can cook on it. And there's all sorts of things in the desert that you can eat. But cactus fruit is probably your safest bet. There are other like plants and stuff that you could survive on. I just wouldn't suggest it, because a lot of the plants that you're going to find in a desert, the poison variety of the edible plant, they're going to look so much alike that they're really hard to distinguish. But cactus fruit is cactus fruit. I mean, like, it's perfect. It really is. It's like perfect food. So yeah, there's that. Now, direction, once again, is really easy and really difficult. The best thing to do is to figure out which direction you should head. Like if you know there's a town west of you somewhere, the easiest way is to watch the sun. You know it rises in the east, it sets in the west, so what you do is you take a stick and you plant it west of you. Kind of plant it like a flag so that you know that direction's west. And then you want to rest during the day. Well, you wake up at night, you know that you need to head west, so you look at where your stick is in relation to where you've set up camp for the night. That tells you which direction to go. Walk in a straight line. Also, you want to pay attention once again to the terrain, because that'll tell you where water is. So yeah, there's that. The other thing is, as far as shelter is concerned, there's a lot of rock outcroppings that can be used as shelter in the desert. You want to make sure that you're resting in shade, but you also need to be careful for things like mountain lions and the like, because you don't want to be too close to like a den. And it's easy enough to tell, because if it's a den, you'll see tracks, trust me. Mountain lion tracks are unforgettable. Just like the tracks of a domestic cat, but way bigger. Your average mountain lion has tracks that are spread out about as far as my hand. So, big animals. Your average mountain lion gets to be about 200 pounds. And they thrive in the desert because they'll hunt for anything. You don't have to worry about coyotes. When I say coyotes, I'm not talking about the variety that we get up here in Ohio. I don't call them coyotes. Those are not fucking coyotes. I don't care what anybody says. Coyotes are from the Southwest, period. End of discussion. They are desert animals. They're desert scavengers. That's what they are. They are opportunists. They will take food where they can get it. But they are also extremely afraid of fire and man. They don't come near fires. They don't really like people much either. In fact, in all my years, I've never heard of one attack of coyotes on a person. And I've never heard of one attack by wolves normally on people either. Wolves you don't typically have to worry about. In fact, wolves can help you in the forest, because they'll lead you to food. It may not sound like the most lovely thing ever in the world, but wolves will bag an animal, let's say an elk or deer, and they'll eat a lot of it, but they won't eat the whole thing. And whatever they don't eat, it's up for grabs. Just be careful you're not doing it while they're still around, because they'll get territorial over it. But in the desert, I would definitely recommend sticking to cactus fruit as much as possible. Even the other parts of the cactus are edible, and they can give you a lot of water content. In fact, your average saguaro cactus that doesn't even have fruit, you can take the needles off of, pretty much like I discussed before. What you want to do is you want to chop the leaf, they call it. It's the kind of flat piece. And you take the needles off of it, and then what you do is you split it in half. So, like you fold it open. And you'll see that there's like this kind of a really pale green, almost white substance in the center of it. Well, that stuff, if you skin it out of the leaf and you eat it, it doesn't taste good. And you don't want to eat it. What you want to do is you want to put it in your mouth. Put it in between your teeth and your gums, all the way around, and just kind of suck it, because it's got water in it. It's got a lot of water in it, and it also carries a lot of calories which keep you alive. They actually call it water butter. Now let's talk about something else that is necessary for survival. That isn't in the main floor, but it's still very, very necessary, is hygiene. What I mean by that is, like in the forest, you want to be as clean as you possibly can. But you want to clean yourself in such a way that you're not giving the scent of man to possible predators. And the way that we used to do this, and it's going to sound crazy, but the way that natives used to clean themselves prior to a hunt is with dirt. Rather than bathing in a river or something with soap and water, dirt itself, and I mean like fine, kind of powdery brown dirt is actually very cleansing, much like mud baths. And what you do is you rub it like you're rubbing soap. And it'll actually clean your body, and will actually give your body the scent of the earth, which will keep possible predators like mountain lions from following your scent. But it'll also keep you incredibly clean, believe it or not. It also comes in handy when you're trying to hunt, because deer, one of their best senses is their sense of smell, and they can smell man a mile away. So if you're not using like you can use soap, but use like the unscented kind, but still, even then, I would say use dirt, believe it or not, because it'll make you smell like their surrounding, and they won't be able to differentiate you. Their visual acuity is limited, so they don't see you until you're moving. It's actually pretty difficult to sneak up on a deer, but it is possible. And what you want to do is you preferably want to use like bushes and high grass and stuff to hide in. You don't ever want to stand up straight until you're ready to attack, because the second it sees you, it's gone. So that's just an example for you. The other thing is, and this one a lot of people don't understand or necessarily know, is like pine. Pines are best friends with survival. The sap can be used to heal deep cuts and wounds. Also, the sap, it tastes like crap, but you can actually use it to clean your teeth. Just don't swallow it. You rub it on your teeth all the way around, just like you're brushing your teeth. You can even use the pine needles as kind of like a rudimentary brush. And then you take a big swig of water, swish it all around like mouthwash, and spit it out. And do that a couple times, because you don't want any traces of it in your mouth, but it will get your mouth clean. In the desert, the water butter that you're already using is actually already going to clean your teeth, because it does have it actually has a high citric acid content, so it'll eat away at anything in your teeth. Also, up in snowy regions, snow's your best friend. It'll clean everything, your teeth, your body, everything. I realize it's cold, but it's actually better when it is cold and it's actually snow instead of melted water, because it's more abrasive, and because it's abrasive, it'll actually pull the dirt and stuff off of you, and as it falls away, it'll just melt. I would recommend in a survival situation to clean yourself at least once every other day using these methods. But it can be once a week, and in a desperate situation. Okay, other helpful tip is let's take the most dire situation I can think of, which is what I believe to be coming. There's, let's call it civil unrest. The best thing to do is to get as far away from heavily inhabited areas like cities as soon as you can. You're going to want everything possible that you would need for survival. Means of purifying water and water itself, food supplies, weapons for hunting and for defending yourself, navigational equipment, compass, map. You're not going to want to have things like your smartphone with you, because there's actually in every smartphone is a GPS chip, which can actually be used for our enemies, let's call it, to track us. Also, with a smartphone, as much as we love them, the day the shit hits the fan, so to speak, this will no longer be with me. And the reason why is very simple. It's because, one, they can track me with it, and number two, even when this phone is off, they can turn on the microphone and the camera to spy on you. So, weapons are going to be a necessity. In fact, I'm planning that, just in the event that stuff starts to happen, I'm not taking any electronic devices with me at all. Zero. Don't want them, don't need them. See, the thing is I can see it coming from a mile away. I really can. And I am kind of concerned about it. But I'm mostly kind of happy about it too. I know that sounds probably like a weird thing, but I am, because Thomas Jefferson said it. When the people fear the government, there's tyranny. When the government fears its people, there is a liberty. And for whatever reason, I believe that the government has forgotten who we are. And I think there's going to come a time when, by fate, by pure virtue, that we're going to have to remind them who we are. Of course, that's just my theory. And a theory is just a theory until it's proven to be true. But, there are things I know that I won't talk about on here. There's, things I've pieced together, I guess you could say, that I won't talk about on here. But trust me, these lessons are things you're going to want to remember. You're going to want to remember how to survive, because that's what it's going to be for everybody. And there are always going to be those who try and take advantage. There's always going to be those who prey on the weak. And just like them, there are always going to be those who stand up and fight. They get the first move. I'll have the last one. Anyways, food for thought. You guys in chat, you have any questions about survival or anything? Okay. Jeremy, to answer your question before, yes, it's eagle root, and it grows just above or just below the snow line. You can find it in the snow a lot of the time, actually, too. You just have to know what to look for. And like I said before, it kind of looks like a lilac plant, or like a cattail plant without the cattail. It's kind of what it looks like. You can actually look pictures of it up online so that you know what to look for. And it's extremely yeah, I agree with you there, and they will fail. Jeremy just said something in chat, and I'm not going to say what it is on the air. No need to give them ammunition, so to speak. Anyways, yeah, they will try. They will not succeed. But yeah, it typically grows below the snow line on a mountain, so you may have to trek a while to find some, but trust me, it's there. And it's good. It's actually pretty good. I'm not a big vegetable eater kind of person, but it's kind of like a cross between eggplant and avocado. I think, anyways, and I would actually eat it now if I knew where to get some around here. But you know, this is all lowland here. Oh, that's a good thing. Lowlands. Ohio is basically a big buffet table from Mother Nature. Like there's wild strawberries and stuff that grow here, so like surviving here would be like absolutely no issue at all. And there's so many rivers here, it would be hard not to find one. So you've got your food and water pretty abundantly here. But yeah, I always recommend having a lighter, maybe a pocket knife or something on you pretty much at all times, because you never know when things are going to happen. And it's good to be prepared, as the Boy Scouts say. Yes and no. I mean, I basically agree with you, but here's not trying to give too much away because you never know who's watching, but let me just say today's resource might be worthless tomorrow. So you always got to think ahead about what might be worth something after, if you get what I'm saying. But yeah, I think it should go back to like a trade and barter system, to be honest. Because the good thing about the trade and barter system that existed in this country prior to money is that it was fair, and nobody made out better than anybody else, really. There really was no such thing as quote-unquote wealthy, unless you lived, back east, like New York and Philadelphia and all that, where they were setting all that up. But the further west you went, the more it was like a trade and barter system, and it was perfect because, like, let's say you had a grocery store, let's say, and I need groceries. Well, instead of paying you money, what I would either do is I would trade like animal pelts or some other kind of food that I've got an abundance of, or even my personal skill set. I would trade that for goods, and that way you're supplying my demand and I'm supplying yours, and that way nobody's getting out ahead, we're all getting out ahead. And it was really kind of the perfect system. And but of course there's greed, so I kind of did away with that. And then there was the gold rush, and then like the railroads and all that nightmare. And it is a nightmare. And one of the things that drives me crazy is they called it progress. Really? This is progress? More pollution than ever before in human history. Smog in practically every major city. This is progress? This is what we're calling it? Nature's basically being devastated all around us. Why? So that some rich schmuck can build more condos? So like the things that are worth something now may not be worth something in the future. Like things that people need are going to be worth more than what people want. And one thing I would suggest to practically everybody, if you own your own home or you're in a situation where you can do what you want to your home, invest in either wind or solar power, because I do believe there is a time coming when the grid is probably going to go down at some point. I think it's inevitable. I think with our current political climate, in combination with the fact that we're still in probably the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, Gas has skyrocketed. You know, it's not going to be long before there's no fossil fuel. If there's no fossil fuel, that means there's no way for them to keep the grid going. Hence why I plan to be off of it. And it's not really hard to build like a windmill to power your house. You can literally build one yourself. You just have to teach yourself what's needed. It's not really hard to do solar power. You can even, I know solar panels and everything that comes with it are kind of expensive, but you can even get broken ones for cheap and repair them, or separate the damaged solar cells from those that aren't damaged, and voila, solar power. And there's plenty of other, alternative fuel sources, and alternative fuel is going to be worth quite a bit once oil's already fucking toast. But things like biodiesel are going to be worth a lot more money, because practically everything that runs on fossil fuel can be run off of biodiesel. It's a very easy conversion. In fact, I know a guy that has a big, like, Dodge freaking dually pickup truck that runs on vegetable oil in Pittsburgh. So, the technology to run on alternative fuels is definitely there. We're just not using it because we're too fat and we're too fucking lazy to convert our way of living. And it's going to very quickly come to a point where we don't have a fucking choice anymore. And I'm kind of grateful for it, actually. I know that sounds crazy, but I am. I'm kind of fucking grateful for it, because every once in a while we need a kick in the ass. The American Revolution was a kick in the ass. The Civil War was a kick in the ass. Both world wars were kicks in the ass. And we haven't had one of those. Not really. There are people saying 9/11, but first of all, I think 9/11 was fucking set up, first of all. And second of all, I think it's pretty plain to see it didn't have the effect that like World War II had. That affected an entire generation globally on the way that they conduct themselves. And every once in a while, that's what we need. I believe it was either Thomas Jefferson or Benjamin Franklin, I get the two confused sometimes, that said the tree of liberty needs to be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Well, guess which we are. The people that actually believe in freedom, we're the patriots. The people that want to take those freedoms away are the tyrants. And that's what we have. That's what our system of government is right now. Because they are using fear to get us to change our behavior. They've convinced an entire nation of people that safety is more valuable than freedom. And I, for one, say fucking bullshit. I fucking fought and bled on foreign fucking soil for our freedom. I'm not going to squander it away. Fuck that. And if you want it, come and take it. So yeah, I think it's all kind of growing pains. I think what's going to end up happening is we're heading for what we're heading for, which I've discussed on my show before. I'm not going to get into that, but we're heading for that. And what's going to happen is we're going to come out on the other side, and the elite, the 1%ers, the wealthy and the politically corrupt are no longer going to be in power here. We are. And that's a beautiful fucking thing. because that means that we can decide we're not going to do this same old shit anymore. We're going to do something that works for everyone. Honestly, I believe the best form of government ever in the history of the earth was tribal democracy, which is where they got democracy from, by the way. But tribal democracy, because literally everybody in the tribe, man, woman, and child, had a voice. Everybody was heard, everybody was taken seriously. And yes, there was a chief, there were elders that would decide what the best course of action was for everyone. Not for themselves. One of my favorite people of all fucking time was Geronimo. Not because he stood up against white people, which he did, and he was a rock star in that area, but more importantly, it was the impact that he had with his own fucking people, and not just his people, not even just the Apache, with all natives everywhere. The impact he had was fucking insane. He said two things that will never ever be forgotten by any fucking Native American anywhere. One, he said, we have fought and we have starved, but in our hearts we have never surrendered. Absolutely fucking true. And two, and this one blows me away today, he said it like just a month or two before he passed away of old age, I might add. He said something that was absolutely brilliant. Absolute fucking brilliant. He said, and it was very simple, and it was in an address to the United States Congress, by the way. He said, you white eyes can say whatever you want about my people. You can call us savage heathens. You can call us the poor red men. You can call us whatever you like. But one thing you cannot call us is unloyal. One thing you cannot say about us ever is that we turn on ourselves. We have no concept of property because we're not owners of the land, we're owned by it. You cannot call us greedy because we have no concept of ownership. You cannot say that your way of life is better than ours, because for thousands of years we may have fought other tribes, but we lived in relative peace. When has that ever been true of you? Wow. And he hit the nail on the head. It's absolutely fucking true. And I'm not saying like white people are evil, kill a man, whatever. What I'm saying is it's absolutely true. I wish that what would have happened is they actually would have taken democracy and did what it was intended for. But that never happened. They fought the American Revolution. Obviously they won. And they came out with this document that said, we the people. But it was never fucking we the people from the start. You can't say we the people and own a slave. It doesn't fucking happen. You can't say we the people and put the people that were originally here on undesirable land like a fucking prison. You can't hold those people down by introducing them to fucking alcoholism. Because that's not we the people, that's we the few. And we the few is what has gotten us here. We the few is why our fucking dollar, like Jeremy said in chat, is in the crapper. We the few is why we're screwed. We the few is why there are more homeless people than ever before. We the few is why the elite are in control of everything we see and everything we hear and everything we do. We the few is what's fucking us over. And we the few is what put together a United Nations agenda in 1947 that states they want to cripple us. They want to cripple our population and decrease it by 75%. We the few are the ones who are trying to kill us now. We the few are the ones that are holding us down. We the few are the ones that are putting shit in our food that are making us sick, fat, and dying. We the few are the ones who are behind everything that has fucking gone wrong in this country. We the few are the ones who are fucking everything up. And it's time we, the many, show them the error of their fucking ways. So, here's your choices. You can sit here like a fucking ostrich with your head in the fucking sand, completely oblivious to all this shit happening in the world, or you can stand up and do fucking something about it. I know which one I'm gonna do. I'm from warrior blood. We've done it for thousands of years. You bring a fight to my fucking doorstep, I'm gonna scalp your silly ass and call it a night. And I'm gonna sleep well too. So there you go. That's my outlook on it. That's what I think. And I think survival skills such as the ones I've talked about tonight are going to be an absolute necessity before it gets better. And I think the reason for that is because of how the situation's going to be. You know, it's already getting there. We're already seeing it. You know, they want to repeal the Second Amendment. They're already got core books in schools teaching that only the militia has the right to bear arms. Fuck you. Fuck you. They're already teaching that white people are evil. They're trying to get us to kill ourselves. They want the whites against the blacks and the Mexicans against the whites, and they want all that. They want us to kill each other off so that they can have everything for themselves. But this is what we have to teach them, people, is that it doesn't fucking work that way. It does not fucking work that way. They've tried that before and it failed. Ask communist Russia. Oh right, that's right, you can't because it doesn't exist anymore. Ask the Ming Dynasty. Oh wait, they don't exist anymore. Every time somebody in power has got it in their head to fuck over their own people for profit, they've gotten screwed in the end. That's what happened with you know, most of the pharaohs in Egypt. That's what happened with Hitler. And that's what's going to happen with you know, they're sure Obama. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. And the only question you have to ask yourself is, are you going to stand up and fight, or are you going to be a coward? It's really your only two choices. Anyways, that's enough of that for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you so much. I will see you Wednesday nights. We are going to be talking about some of my favorite haunted places, actually, around the world. And we're also going to be talking about EVPs, which I'm going to try and play for you. I'm going to get that figured out somehow. So don't forget to tune in Wednesday. Thank you all for tuning in. Loving my pack, my tribe. Until next time, peace out.